You're listening to the Mind Manual Podcast, episode 45, What Holds Us Back? If you want a particular result in your life, but you're unable to get it, tune in to start training your brain and expanding your emotional intelligence to unlock the most powerful and underutilized performance tool that we have. It's the most important work you could do because it affects every area of your life. Welcome back, folks. Today, we're going to have a look at what you think holds us back from committing to doing the things that will improve our life, our health, our finances, our relationships, whatever it is. It seems that whenever we're met with any prospect of change, we become ambivalent. We're at either end of the rope, pulling to remain with the comfort of the status quo in the short term at one end, and at the other end, pulling hard in wanting the change we know will ultimately result in a more comfortable and fulfilling life in the long term. And at the center of this rope, we have change. The problem is, however, the human brain is very uncomfortable with the idea of change. It comes with so many strings attached, and yet we don't necessarily know which strand to pull on. There is the threat of uncertainty when we move away from our current position. We don't know if the new position will present any dangers or threats to our social standing, our physical safety, our financial security. The known is predictable and feels safe to the primitive part of our brain that is consumed with survival. Then there is the threat of sacrifice in thinking that to change from this to that, it requires loss in some way. And to the primitive brain, loss represents pain, which is to be avoided at all costs in order to survive. Pain is strongly linked with death. Pain is one of the cornerstones in the motivational triad that will move us in order to stay alive. So it will have us moving away from it. We also have the threat of effort and hard work, which represents depletion. Conservation of energy triangulates as another cornerstone of survival. And in the earlier part of our civilization, when food was scarce, we were programmed to conserve energy. Effort is a function of work, which will exhaust us at the mere thought of it. The third limb to this piece is that of pleasure. Pleasure secures the other two motivations in place, providing the stabilizing force that offsets us in seeking to move away from pain and in moving away from work or effort to conserve energy. We don't operate well in voids. So while ever we're moving away from these two, we need to be moving towards something, which is going to be, of course, pleasure. Pleasure, however, is typically a very short-lived event. Our dopamine receptors are turned on with the ingestion of a substance, usually in the form of sugar, flour, alcohol, or drugs. And then they are metabolized and the effect fades. Or if it's in the form of a process as opposed to a product, whether it be a win in some way and hitting the jackpot, winning at the races, finding a funny YouTube, or hunting some social likes, it's felt as a natural high that peaks and then falls away. The transient nature of these highs keeps us firmly in the domain of the short term. And so what we end up doing, due to this innate biological wiring, is that we trade the long-term higher ideals and goals for the short-term pleasure hits in the moment, which ultimately keeps us from moving in the direction of the desires that we have for our future. We become stuck in a holding pattern, perpetuated by the forces of this motivational triad, keeping us locked into Groundhog Day. It becomes this positive feedback loop with negative consequences that gets reinforced with each lap of this closed circuit. Intellectually, we might understand what the specific action list might be that would have us edging closer to our desired outcome. But emotionally, we can't resist the pull towards pleasure or withstand the discomfort of the perceived pain and effortful load of the work that we think is required of us in order to do the thing. And so we don't. And status quo remains. Another source of sabotage is when we get stuck in the freeze response for fear of failing and falling prey to the wrath and backlash of our own criticism, our harsh judgment, and high perfectionistic standards. We become paralyzed by this black or white thinking. When we slip up, even just a bit, the whole thing's off with this all or nothing mindset. And since we're never, ever going to be perfect, we cancel on ourselves and remove the prospect of having to fail by never taking it on in the first place. When this is the case, we go in to discover and heal the source of these perfectionistic tendencies and develop a new framework for processing life so that it doesn't need to perfectly line up and how we imagine it should be in order to feel safe, worthy, and in control. What I also want to point out is that if you knew how to process any emotion so that you could do away with having to avoid, distract, or resist the feelings of pain and suffering, the sacrifice or the pleasure, you would be able to move through it, knowing that you are safe and you will survive. And then you could look back and see that the thing that kept you from following your heart and realizing everything you dreamed your life could be was at best a mild, inconvenient discomfort that passes within 3 to 5 minutes, which is the time it takes to process that negative emotion. And you would realize that it isn't that life-threatening situation your primal brain imagined it could be. So taking yourself out of this scary future and into the present moment where you are safe and alive as you move in the direction of your dream, it's a very useful strategy to engage in. This will involve bringing you out of your self-induced trance by interrupting this holding pattern and focusing on the task that will have you taking a step in the direction of your higher ideals, which has been lovingly planned out by your higher self, using the practice of mindfulness. So you don't get caught up in your head fearing the worst. You're able to stay centered as a curious observer, intently interested and focused on the present moment experience before you, using all of your senses, the noise, the touch, the smell, the feel, the sight of being fully immersed and present, which is all we ever have. You become at one with what is, without the struggle or resistance, and you free yourself to keep moving forward where you know the joy, the health, the prosperity will be. When you learn how to eliminate this tug of war that we have with change and the ambivalence of wanting things to stay the same while also wanting the things that change could bring, and you go about breaking the shackles of this reinforcement loop, you set yourself free to pursue that which you truly desire and are yet to experience. So if you feel as if you've more than ticked the box of being unhealthy, in physical pain, or stuck in a routine that doesn't produce the results you want, then it's time to interrupt that pattern and step into this moment as you take another step and another in the direction you would choose if you were no longer afraid to experience any emotion, because you know how to be in that moment and to move through it without the hangover of the fight, flight, or freak out of our mind. All of this would be available to you Using the power of coaching, we go through a detailed chain analysis of the unfolding cognitive and emotional events that are keeping you stuck in this loop. We then plan a way to interrupt it and practice the techniques that can take you out of it and in the direction of where you really want to go. Are you in? And if not, start to become curious and aware of this process that I've just described that's going on and keeping you locked in Groundhog Day. Notice all of the arguments for and against your mind will offer you in making the change your higher self would want for you. Write them down, get them out of your head onto paper and challenge them. See through to the ridiculousness of them and how we fool ourselves with reasons and justifications that simply aren't true. And yet we blindly believe them without question because we don't want to feel the discomfort of an emotion, a physical sensation. And so we spend a lifetime trying to avoid never having to feel or process an emotion. We inevitably become a prisoner of our own mind. None of us are taught how to navigate that. We are none the wiser. I mean, who has ever been handed a manual to this supercomputer and all the programs it's running? Understanding how the mind operates and the patterns that get embedded over a lifetime is the process of seeing through the illusion your mind has created and is perpetuating that you otherwise are oblivious to. When you're ready to shatter that illusion and create a new default program that will open your life up to all the possibilities, the Mind Manual can offer a roadmap and your own personal guide to creating a new way forward. Tapping into the power of our mind is exciting stuff. It's where you can unlock and free yourself from whatever is keeping you stuck. Thanks for listening, guys, and have a wonderful day. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out Mind Scholars. It's my monthly coaching membership where we take all of this work to a much deeper level. We study it and then apply it to the everyday in every way. So if you want to take your life to a whole new level, join me in Mind Scholars over at themindmanual.com/join. I look forward to seeing you there.